Hi everyone, it's Ian here from IBI Performance Coaching. Today I'm going to bring you a short video that I think will change the way that you warm up for the better. Enjoy. If you want to maximize your warm-up effectiveness, we need to start by recognizing why it is that we warm up to begin with. And from what I can see, there are two major reasons. The first reason that we would warm up before doing an exercise is in order to get blood flushed into the muscles and the joints that we're going to be using in order to provide lubrication, to make the movement less painful or smoother. And this is absolutely an important move. I would, however, suggest that it's not quite as necessary as many people think if you are going with a controlled cadence in your movements. Now, having said that, if it's a movement like a deadlift, if it's a movement like a squat, if it's a movement like a bench press that are technical movements, I would say this is still important to do because they require multiple joints, and you're probably moving a lot of weight with these joints. Whereas if you're working out on a machine, in my experience, it's not quite as difficult to just go right into a working set in that case without a whole lot of warming up the joints, as long as, again, your cadence is slow and controlled. Okay, but the second major reason that we need to do a warm-up, and this really does speak to the technical movements like the squats and the deadlifts, the bench presses, the overhead presses, these sorts of things, is that we're practicing the movement before we take on a high level of challenge with that movement. And it's not just about practicing the movement itself, it's about practicing carrying a heavy load or moving or dealing with a lot of resistance. Because for your nervous system, as the load increases, as you're working closer to your maximal amount of resistance, there is a skill, a sort of neurological skill that is required there. And you will know this if you have ever, taken time off from lifting heavy, and you may not have lost muscle, and you may not have lost strength in sort of, objectively speaking, your grip strength probably is the same. Maybe your isometric strength is probably the same. But as soon as you put a bunch of weight on a bar and have it on your back, and it's been a while, your nervous system will say, oh, geez, what is this? Like, we're not used to this. So there's a neurological skill to moving a lot of weight. And that's important to recognize. So when we have this second purpose, the second focus of the warm-up, this is where I think people are really falling short. Now, if all we were doing is trying to flush blood into the muscles and the joints, then there would be no real reason to do, an escalating amount of resistance with your warm-ups, which is the way that people typically do it. You would probably want to do a very lightweight and just do a lot of repetitions kind of quickly, because that's really what would get the blood pumping. No, we need to practice the skill of the movement under increasing resistance so that we're warning our nervous system of what's coming. We are practicing that skill so that we're increasing our familiarity with it in preparation for doing it at a high level of challenge. And this is where people are falling short, as I said. And the reason that they're falling short is that most people, when they're doing their warm-ups, they have like a number in mind. I'm going to do 10 reps of this weight, and then I'm going to do 8 reps of that weight, and then I'm going to do 5 reps of that weight, and then I'm going to do 3 reps of this weight, and then I'm going to move into my working weight, something like that. There's no real reason, though, to have a rep count in mind. The only time you need to have a rep count in mind is if you're going for a progressive overload, if you're trying to increase the number of repetitions over what you did last time. That's really the only time you would need that. You should be able to, with just a little bit of practice, you should be able to tell when you're starting to fatigue yourself from doing your warm-up reps and stop like a rep short of that, right? Because you don't want to fatigue yourself with the warm-up reps. Again, it's for getting the blood flowing, getting the joints and the muscles ready, and practicing the movement. It's not for fatiguing yourself. So instead of thinking about, I'm going to do 8 reps, I'm going to do 10 reps of this for my warm up, just think about, I'm going to go until I'm just shy of starting to fatigue the muscles, in a meaningful way. So what should you be doing instead of counting? Instead of counting reps, you should be grading your reps. Grading your reps. And what I mean by that is assigning a point, assigning points to each of the repetitions you do. Because again, what you're trying to do is practice the movement and perfect the movement. So if you were, say, doing a squat, you're warming up for your squatting workout, you do a rep at a low weight. It's a warm-up weight. And instead of saying 1 and then moving on to 2, after you do that first one, you're going to give yourself a grade. I like to do 1 to 10 because it's very clear. And I would say, that was a 7, for example. That was a 7. Then you do another one. That was an 8. It felt better. It felt smoother. I didn't let my chest collapse, or my knees didn't cave in as much on that one. And what you're doing is sending an unambiguous signal to your body, to your entire physical existence, of what it is that you want it to do. This is, in my opinion, more effective than giving more linguistic feedback to yourself, saying, "Oh, mentally, I need to keep my knees from caving in," or something like that. One, that's too intellectual for your sort of subconscious, for the entirety of your psyche to understand. You want something that's unambiguous. A 7 is better than a 5. Right? Very clear. And because it's a whole system that's working, it's not just about keeping your knees from caving in, right? You want to evaluate the entire movement holistically. So give yourself a grade after each repetition, reset, and do the next repetition, and try to get a better grade each time. If you do this with a mind for preventing yourself from becoming meaningfully fatigued, you will be much better prepared for when you get to your top sets, when you get to your working sets, and over time you will be teaching yourself how to perform the movement better. In this way, your warm-up sets aren't only benefiting you because they're preparing you for the real work. They become the work. They become the practice of the movement, which will pay huge, huge dividends as you move forward with your journey. So I made a video all about this method of learning a skill, of rapid skill acquisition. So if you're interested in that, you can check it out. I'll put a link at the end of this video. Thank you so much.